Mina had always been a quiet child, content with her own company. Her room was a place of comfort, a little sanctuary where she could retreat into her thoughts, surrounded by pink walls and sparkly decorations. Her bed, with its soft pink blankets and fluffy pillows, was a world of its own. Yet, lately, it had become a place of unease, a space where someone, seemed to be lurking in the darkness. It started small. At first, it was just a flicker out of the corner of her eye, a tiny shift in the air. But then it grew. At night, as the house fell into silence, Mina began to hear the faintest scurrying noises, the sound of something moving across the floor or crawling along the ceiling. She would freeze, listening carefully, but when she glanced toward the source of the noise, there was nothing there, nothing but the shadows. Maybe it's just a mouse, she thought to herself the first time she heard it. But even then, she knew it didn't feel like any mouse she'd ever heard. It was too deliberate, too swift. Mice weren't that quiet. The next night, the sound returned. But this time, the noises didn't stop. They grew louder, a soft, frantic scratching. It seemed to come from everywhere, along the walls, across the ceiling, and even under her bed. The darkness in her room seemed to grow thicker, swallowing the edges of the walls. And then, it started to feel alive. She told her parents, of course. They were her protectors, weren't they? They were supposed to make the shadows go away. But when Mina explained, her mother just laughed. "Oh, Mina, you're imagining things again," Mom said as she tucked her in one night. "There's nothing in your room. Nothing but your wild imagination. Go to sleep, sweetheart." But it wasn't just her imagination. Mina knew that. She felt it. Something was there. It wasn't like a dream. It was real, lurking, waiting. And that night, as the soft hum of the house faded into quiet, she felt its presence again. The animal, as she had come to think of it, was always there, just beyond her sight. It wasn't like any animal she had seen before. She had no idea what it looked like, only that it was quick, always moving, always watching. Sometimes it would be a whisper in the dark, a low hiss she could almost understand but could never quite catch. At other times, it would scurry across the floor, like a rat or a bug, but with a speed that didn't seem natural. The next morning, she woke with a cold shiver running down her spine. She didn't tell her parents again. They wouldn't believe her. But it wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was real. It had touched her. It was after the third night that the animal began to get bold. Mina had been lying in bed, her eyes wide open, watching the shadows play on the walls as the last of the daylight disappeared. She could hear the familiar sound of the house settling, creaks, groans, the soft swish of the wind outside, but it was the quietness that unsettled her the most. The stillness that made the air heavy. Suddenly, a movement at the corner of her bed caught her eye. A small scurrying sound. She turned her head quickly, but when she looked, nothing was there. She blinked. Then she saw it again, a shadow, quick as lightning, darting across the floor. Mina's heart raced. It was real. Her breath caught in her throat, and she froze. The thing in the corner was moving again, closer now, across the edge of the floor, up along the wall. Mina's mind raced, and a cold sweat broke out across her forehead. Her hand trembled as she pulled the covers tighter around her. No, she thought. No, this isn't happening. I'm just imagining things. I'm imagining things. But she wasn't. She knew she wasn't. The animal wasn't hiding anymore. It was moving, watching her, and it wanted something. The tiny, near-silent scurrying noises grew louder, as though it were getting closer to her bed, closer to her. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up, her skin crawling as though the very air in the room had changed. It was almost at her feet now. Mina bit her lip to keep from crying out. She wanted to scream, to run, but the fear paralyzed her. If she moved, if she even dared to turn on the light, she would never escape the dark, never escape the thing that was waiting for her. And then, it touched her. A soft, almost imperceptible brush along her leg. Just a quick, cold touch, but enough to make her gasp. The animal was in her bed now. It was there, so close, that she could almost feel its presence, even though she couldn't see it. "Mina," came a voice, a low whisper from somewhere near her side. It was soft, almost soothing, but unmistakably wrong. The voice was too familiar. Mina froze, her blood turning to ice. It was her father's voice. A soft whisper, just on the edge of her hearing, but unmistakably his. It was not a comforting whisper, not a father's loving voice. It was colder, rasping, like it was being dragged from somewhere deep, somewhere dark. She couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. "Mina," it repeated, and the voice trembled in the air like a warning. The hairs on her arms stood up as the animal crawled deeper into her bed, pressing against her. She could feel the weight of it, the chill it brought with it. Something was wrong. Something was coming. Something was. The blanket shifted. She felt its cold legs brushing against her skin. Mina pulled the covers tightly around her, wishing she could melt into the bed, vanish entirely. But the animal was persistent. It crawled closer, and she could feel it next to her, its presence smothering the air around her. She closed her eyes, praying it would go away. But it didn't. The soft whisper came again, this time closer. "Mina." Her eyes shot open. The animal was there, inches away, its breath hot and foul against her skin. The voice, her father's voice, was now distorted, ragged, and filled with an unnatural hunger. "Mina," it whispered again. "It's time." Mina wanted to scream, but her throat was tight. She could feel the pressure of the thing against her skin, pressing harder now. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. It was as though the very air in the room had turned to stone, pressing down on her chest. The room seemed to shrink around her, the walls closing in, the darkness swallowing everything. The sounds of the house, the creaking of the floorboards, the soft hum of distant voices, were all gone now. The only thing that remained was the suffocating silence and the faint, rasping breath of the animal. And then, as if in slow motion, it spoke again. "Mina, I'm here. I've been waiting." The words slithered through the air, thick and slow, crawling into her ears. Mina wanted to shut it out, wanted to curl up and hide, but she couldn't. The thing was inside her mind now, filling every thought with its presence. And just as quickly as it had come, it stopped. The weight beside her lifted. The voice faded away. For a moment, the room was still again. Mina's heart pounded in her chest, her body frozen in terror. She didn't dare move, didn't dare open her eyes. It was gone, she told herself. But was it? The scurrying noise began again, soft and rhythmic, like the tapping of hundreds of tiny feet. Mina held her breath, waiting, her mind racing. It was still there, somewhere. Waiting for her.